Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite genres in horror, and that is underwater horror. If you've been around the channel, you know that is, I don't know, some of my favorite books to read. So I picked up the book The Deep by Nick Cutter because it was recommended to me by, and I apologize if I say this username wrong, Sodamananzo. I'm probably saying that wrong. Thank you for the recommendation. What a wild, weird book. Definitely felt very cosmic horror vibes. Man, what a creepy, awesome book. The story of this is there is this pandemic of sorts, I would call it, happening, and people are getting what is called the gets, which is short for forgetful, is what I'm assuming, because people slowly start to lose their memories. So they start getting like weird spotting around their hands and stuff, and they'll forget stuff like, oh, where they put their keys or stuff. You know, normal stuff. You do that, you walk into a room, you forget why you walked into the room. Normal stuff that happens. But then it progressively gets worse and worse. They forget like birthdays and anniversaries, and then they just forget how to do things, how to eat, and eventually how to live. Like you'll come across people and they're just walking into a wall repeatedly because they don't know how to like turn away from the wall and keep on walking. And then eventually they break out in these gross like pustulent sores and stuff all over their bodies before they just forget how to live, and then they die. All right, so that's happening in the world, and it's affected everyone across the planet. So there's these two brothers, Lucas and Clayton. Clayton is currently 8 miles deep under the ocean in the Mariana Trench because they've discovered this stuff called ambrosia. And ambrosia seems like it may just be the key to unlocking a cure for the gets. So far, some of the experiments have shown that like it cures all kinds of cancer and all kinds of stuff. So his brother's down there and he has like this super genius brain and mind, and he's always been really bad with relating to other people. He's like cold and robotic, but he's super smart. So he's down in this base, Trieste, which is down underwater. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Trieste. They lose communication between the ship that's up above there and like it's not a ship. It's kind of like a whole like floating base above the base that's down 8 miles down. And they lose communications, but they do receive a transmission where it's Clayton and he's asking for his brother Lucas, telling him to like come home. And so the government, military people, whatever, they send for him because they think, okay, you know, maybe he can come and find out what's going on down there. Another thing that had happened was something had surfaced. One of the scientists who was down there came back, and they did not come back alive. And so now there's two people down there, his brother and this other doctor, and stuff seems all weird, like they have no audio, they have no video, and stuff's just not working down there. So they need him to go see what's going on down there. And I mean, you know, under the water, under the sea, stuff's like space. What do you think's down there, like in the deep? I always get like start thinking about like the Sleeping King or Cthulhu, you know. And it's not a Cthulhu book, but it's definitely got those cosmic horror vibes, which was freaking great. And you get a lot of flashbacks too into Lucas's life and growing up with his brother and their mother, who was like horrible and sadistic, and she was pretty messed up, and she, I think, messed her kids up kind of big time. You get like some vignettes and windows into the tragedies that had happened in people's lives and all of this stuff. And so Lucas goes down there. He goes down with this woman, Allison, or Al, and she has been in the military and on submarines. So she's been working in this environment on the sea and has been on submarines and boats and stuff for most of her military career. And so she is the pilot for the sub, and she kind of ferries stuff up and down, you know, takes supplies to the guys down there and whatnot. So she's going to take Lucas down there so he can try to go talk to his brother and see what's going on and try to make communication, because they need to know what's going on, and the world has sunk like trillions of dollars into this, and it's not just one area, it's like all of them, like all over the world, to find out this could be a cure-all for this thing that's happening, you know, globally. So he goes down there, and when they get down there, the one doctor they see first, and he's all like crazy and won't let them in to the rest of the base, because like they dock, they get in there, and the doctor, Toy is his name, he's got like the crazy eyes, and he's like, you're not who you think you are, or something along those lines, or you're not who you say you are, you're not who you say you are, and he's all like, bah! And so they're like, all right, well, he's definitely not letting us in this base. So our hope is your brother. And he's like, so wait, we don't even know if we can get in here yet? And Al's like, nope. So you have that. And when they first get in there too, they find this dog, Little B. And Little B is like a lifeline to Lucas throughout this whole book. And man, what a sweet little baby. So the dog just like kind of gives him comfort and almost helps tether him to reality, because like when they're down there, it's like a weird environment, and not everyone does so well under there, you know, like claustrophobia, you can't just walk outside, everything, there's water, you could be crushed if something springs a hole, you know, you might die if you're down there. That's a very real reality. And so dealing with that, dealing with not having a lot of people to talk to, dealing with the utter darkness of deep, deep ocean, and what your psyche and mind can do when you're down there. And so eventually his brother like sees him, and he's like, oh, hello. He's like, hey. So the brother lets them in. He's like, hey, yeah, we got the transmission that you wanted me to come here. And his brother Clayton's like, what? I didn't want you to come here. Are you kidding me? What do I need you for? Which has pretty much been like their relationship for most of his life. And he's like, I heard the transmission. It was you. He's like, but you did sound very out of it and weird and whatnot. And he's like, I never called for you. And so then he's like, well, maybe you were sleepwalking or something. And the brother's just like, no. He's like, well, you're here now, whatever, blah. So, you know, they're gonna hang out and kind of see what's going on and whatnot. And, you know, to try to talk to the brother and learn more about what's happening with this ambrosia stuff and all of that. And, you know, kind of gets a tour of the base. And there's this one area where it looks out like into the water, and there's all this like snow falling, which is basically like the pieces of dead bodies of like fish and other things that have died in the ocean. And it's almost like a snow. And then every once in a while you see like the weird stuff of the ambrosia. And when they get in there too, immediately stuff starts like screwing with them. It seems like the shadows, like imagining things in the shadows, like monsters and weird stuff, hearing like skittering and imagining giant like millipedes and stuff are in the ventilation, and it sounds like footsteps and children running above them and all kinds of weird sounds. And then, you know, the one doctor who had surfaced and died, his lab is all sealed off. And so they're able to like lock themselves down and whatnot in each of their separate labs. So the one lab is all sealed off, and there's just like all this like black stuff over the window. And Clayton just is kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I think he was dealing with some toxic substances and whatnot, but that's sealed and it's fine, whatever, we're all fine. And you also have like the pressure of the water on your bones being that far under the ocean. Like humans aren't meant to handle that pressure. So like a lot of stuff is being messed with. So what is real and what is not real? And it gets creepier and scary, and like a lot of the flashback memories, a lot of that ties into like the ending of the story that's just kind of super wild. All right, so this is just of what the story's about. It's absolutely twisted and fantastic and cosmically weird. I read it in a couple days. I thought it was a super addictive read. I loved it because it's underwater horror. Come on, you'd have to be really terrible for me not to like your underwater horror if you ever write one. And I have yet to not like an underwater horror. I thought it was fantastic. The ending is super weird though. So if you're a person who doesn't like a kind of almost a little bit open-ended ending, you might not like it, but I liked it. It's freaking weird as crap. I didn't find it to be super predictable, so I liked that about it too, because I really didn't know where it was going to go from like how the story was going and twisting and turning, if like some of the imaginary stuff wasn't actually so imaginary and some of the stuff they thought was real was actually imaginary. Does that sound confusing? Because maybe a little bit is, but the way the author writes, I loved it. Like you jump head first right into the story. I love that. Like the first page, you're like, what the F am I getting into? So, you know, if you like horror, you're like, yeah, this is gonna be weird, isn't it? And it's totally weird. So this is my first Nick Cutter book. I've been meaning to read this author for a while. Whenever I start a new author too, I always like never know where to start if they have like a bunch of different books. So this was a good starting point for me because, you know, I like underwater horror. Other underwater horror that I really enjoyed. Do I have a favorite? I mean, recently I really liked Thomas Oldehuvelt's newest book, Oracle. That's like a weird horror with old gods, and it's super creepy and weird. Enjoyed that a lot. If you haven't had a chance to check out that book yet as well, I have a standalone review for that, and that will be the next video coming up. So stick around and you can click on that if you are so inclined. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.